वेलकम टू अ न्यू शो जो हम आपके लिए आज फिर से कम्युनिटी राउंड अप में लेकर आए हैं। आज यहाँ पे ब्रैम्पटन में लोफर्स लेक के ऊपर आज रूबी सोहता जो कि एमपी हैं ब्रैम्पटन नॉर्थ से, उन्होंने एक इवेंट यहाँ पे किया था और यहाँ पे उन्होंने इनवाइट किया था हमारे अटॉर्नी जनरल आरिफ विरानी को और जो हमारे इमिग्रेशन मिनिस्टर हैं मार्क मिलर को, ताकि जो कम्युनिटी के कंसर्न्स हैं इमिग्रेशन से रिलेटेड या क्राइम से रिलेटेड उनके ऊपर फेडरल लेवल पे क्या काम किए जा रहे हैं या क्या न्यू लॉज लेके आए जा रहे हैं उनके ऊपर यहाँ पे बात की। इसके अलावा यहाँ पे आई हुई थी सोनिया सिद्धू जो कि एमपी हैं ब्रैम्पटन साउथ से, और कमल खेरा भी थी जो कि ब्रैम्पटन वेस्ट से एमपी हैं, और ये सारे जो लिबरल आज एमपीज़ और मिनिस्टर्स थे उनका आज मेन एम यही था कि कम्युनिटी को बताया जा सके कि क्या किया जा रहा है कम्युनिटी के अंदर, लॉज को स्ट्रिक्ट कैसे किया जा रहा है, इमिग्रेशन लॉज को कैसे ज़्यादा स्ट्रिंजेंट बनाया जा रहा है, और इसके अलावा जो कानून के अंदर बहुत ज़्यादा खराबियाँ आती जा रही हैं उसके लिए क्या किया जा रहा है। तो आइए हम आपको एक उसकी छोटी सी झलक दिखाते हैं।
Local communities, especially, well, the community what I'm representing is the Chinese community. So my question is that, will the new immigration policy impact the Hong Kong Pathway program for those applicants who already live in Canada and still waiting for the result? Is there any chance that only some of them will get the PR, but some of them couldn't because of the cutting down?
You know, it's a really important question, because what we wanted to make sure while we were addressing, you know, the really strong flows of people coming to this country for a variety of reasons. I mean, most of people come in for economic reasons. 60% of our immigration levels are permanent residencies for economic pathways. Another 20+% for family reunification, spouses, grandparents, and then a humanitarian pathway, which is really important to who we are as a country. The Hong Kong pathway was an important part of that. And when I was doing the adjustments that we've been looking at over the last year, because we always take about a year, my next year's plan started a week ago, but it isn't something you do overnight. And what you want to make sure with the humanitarian pathways, with people whose lives are on the line, is that you're respecting the commitments that you've made publicly. So it's fully my intention to respect the Hong Kong pathway. We're seeing, it is not one where we entirely control the volumes, given the numbers that we are seeing. So some of the applicants may face more delay, but we have, as you may have noted, probably covering this, a few weeks ago we extended the work permit process so people aren't stuck without the ability to work in Canada. And so we do fully intend to respect that pathway. It's a humanitarian pathway, and a lot of the folks that would qualify under that pathway could also qualify as part of the skilled pathways. And if they feel that's a faster way, I would encourage them to do that. And because we're talking about a talented pool of people that could become permanent residents and Canadian citizens, we hope, through a different pathway. But a really important question, because I think our humanitarian commitments are super important. But we have been facing calls from Canadians and from our own party to cut back, and that's something we did. I think it makes sense, but it does have impacts. You're right.
If so, like as you said, it's a very important question, and at the same time you're trying your best to respect the program. The following question is, if we still following this program, and as the federal government still following with that, is there any adjustment will happen after the federal election in the next year, or just?
We plan to win, so it'll be the same. But Canadians always have a choice. We think this is the better one.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you yourself.
Okay, I don't have any follow-up, but I have two questions from two ministers. So my first question, sir, from you is, Mr. Miller, that a lot of students now have started seeking asylum because they know that they have to complete their studies and now go back because you have reduced the immigration levels. So this actually is creating a lot of problems because a lot of asylum claims have started coming in. So how do you intend to deal with this? And are you looking for immigration from just about one particular part of the world, or are you spreading it over? Because already immigration problem has, created issues in this country. My second question would be from you, Mr. Virani, that in wake of the Gaza war, hate crimes have tremendously increased in this country. Every single day there are either protests or clashes or one thing or the other going on. How do you intend to deal with this? Because the police keeps on saying that we are hiring more and more people, but do you think hiring more is going to tackle the issue, or are there other strategies in place? So from Mr. Miller and from Mr. Miller.
Sure. So thank you for having us. Thank you to Ruby for inviting us, and to my colleagues here in the GTA and the 905. It's amazing to see all of you. What I would say to you with respect to hate crimes, the statistics are appalling in terms of the rise that we've seen, whether it's StatsCan, whether it's individual hate crimes units. It is titanic, the shift that we're seeing. And it resonates across a number of groups, not just with respect to the Gaza conflict, but we can talk about targeting of the Black Canadians, Indigenous peoples, you name it, hate is on the rise. And it's incumbent upon us to act. And what I'd say to you is that we have things that we've already put on the table. My colleague Kamal has put together an anti-hate action plan that is $270 million deep. That's about targeted investments. That's really, really important, those kinds of investments, and I salute her leadership. What I have on the table is an entire package that deals with online safety. It's really important for people to understand how we get to violence in our communities, where it starts. It often starts with radicalization that happens online. And I'll say to you that I've got a bill in Parliament right now. It's called Bill C-63. It's the Online Harms Act. And when we launched that bill at the end of February of this year, I was joined literally side by side at the podium with the Centre for Jewish and Israeli Affairs and the National Council of Canadian Muslims. Not two groups that have been seen in the same room very frequently since October 7th of last year, but they're united on that day because they both know that their communities get targeted by what people learn online. There are also features of that bill that deal with how we would address hate directly. I'm in the 905 right now. We know that there have been tensions and protests flaring up right here in this area. There's been one charge laid of public incitement of hatred. There's a possibility of laying further charges if we have the tools in hand for police officers. What am I talking about? Our bill proposes a freestanding hate crimes offense, which would not require the Attorney General's consent, could be more readily laid by law enforcement officials. I've literally just come from meeting with Deputy Chief Milanovic of the Peel Regional Police. We talked about this very issue. What I'm keen on doing is ensuring that the community here in Brampton and Mississauga and the 905 are all addressed in terms of their needs, but the needs of all Canadians are addressed by equipping officers with the right tools. It's interesting you raised the number of officers. I've noted from Chief Nish that he actually has a pitch in for 300 more officers. Bill Blair, the guy we still call the chief, he's our colleague now at the cabinet table, reminds me that when he was chief, there were 700 more officers in Toronto than there are now. I think a part of the equation has to be ensuring that we have enough law enforcement officials, but the part of the equation that I can help address is what are the tools that those officials have. Bill C-63 complements those tools. It's a great bill, but we need to get it passed and break a logjam that we're having in Parliament, which is being obstructed right now by His Majesty's official opposition. So if the law and order agenda is real and people want to address victims of crime, including victims of hatred, well then my appeal would be to Pierre Poilievre to break the logjam, help us pass this legislation that will give people the tools to keep them safe.
Just on your question about international students.
Asylum seekers.
And the asylum seekers that have come out of that cohort of international students. It is a record high this year. It'll probably get worse before it gets better, people claiming, for a number of reasons, simply because of the volume of students that are choosing to seek asylum. I think most of those claims are not legitimate claims. In a country like Canada, a guy like me doesn't get to decide, I think for a lot of good reasons, because it shouldn't be a political process. It's decided by the Immigration and Refugee Board that is currently overloaded. So when systems like that get overloaded, their credibility gets questioned. We need to make sure that people making claims do so in a fashion that is both ethical and legitimate. I sent a letter last week to the College of Immigration Consultants saying we believe that advice given to students saying that they should be filing asylum is not ethical pursuant to their rules.
The consultants are telling them.
Well, I have more than anecdotal evidence and probably less than a fully scientific study that is the case, but enough evidence to send that letter. There's lots of work to do in the entire ecosystem of international students to address this challenge. When colleges and universities tell me that they have been super responsible in bringing people in the volumes that they brought in, largely making 30, 40, 50,000 off the backs of students, I point to these numbers that do not indicate a healthy system, or at least the behavior that we look for when we look for real international quality. The nature of there is one source country that gives us most of our international students. It is a large percentage. It's India. It probably not surprising given the pure population. It should not be surprised from people that we recruit from China and India. They are some of the largest countries by population in the world. What I do say to colleges and universities that have perhaps not had the best recruiting practice or relied on third parties that don't necessarily have the best interest of Canada or the students that they're serving is there needs to be a higher cost of acquisition of students when they go abroad. And perhaps even looking at other countries and diverse sources of talent, that there is an immense amount of talent coming in from these countries. But I think these institutions have been chasing the dollar more than the talent, and that is sort of an ongoing conversation, a very difficult one that we're having, both with provinces and with universities and colleges that is going to continue. But the jump in asylum claims, I don't think is acceptable. To anyone studying the field, not particularly surprising, even though I don't believe that most of them are legitimate claims. And we will be assuming our responsibility federally to act on that over the coming months.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Just name and outlook, please.
Jaspreet from Omni News. So there is a group of Indian international students protesting against new immigration policy in Brampton from last 3 months, I guess, and they have a permanent encampment there. Any message for them?
Yeah, and I've met with members of Parliament that have gone to meet them. They have diverse views on what they feel they are entitled to. I'm not going to question anyone's right to protest in the right manner in Canada. This is a country where people are entitled to protest the government. The reality is that for a lot of students that are here, permanent residency is not guaranteed. It's a privilege, it's not a right. And there is the reality that a number of students will have to make the decision as to whether they stay or whether they leave. And on the expiry of their work permits or their study permits, they are no longer entitled to remain here. If they remain here, they are in an irregular, they have an irregular status, and they will be removed. And that's just reality. So that's a choice, and life is about choices. My teams have met with them. There are within our, and this was one of the thinking, part of the important thinking behind our immigration levels this year, was to make sure that we were actually drawing from the talented pool, a large number of which are students, to become permanent residents of Canada. That's not everyone, and people still have to qualify under what is a stringent point system to become a permanent resident of Canada, and therefore, after some time, a Canadian citizen. That has value, and it shouldn't be diminished in a country like Canada. It wouldn't be fair to other people that are here in an irregular fashion, for whom we will not regularize their status, to suddenly propel a group of people that have only been here a couple of years to the front of the line simply because they're protesting. And I want to be quite clear about that. This isn't a response that lacks compassion, and I certainly feel for them, but it doesn't entitle them to the conclusion that they want simply because they're protesting.
Yeah, and follow-up. How much Canada is prepared, because Mr. Trump has already won the presidential election in the US, and his opening statement that US will face world largest deportation, and how much Canada is ready to prepare to stop the illegal immigration from US border?
I mean, it's a simple answer. If people come to the country in a fashion that is irregular, they will be removed, and that's reality. The border with the US is one that we've managed well, and we have to, as a matter of our own national interest and national security, over the last 10-year period. We've had challenges during that time, including a global, hopefully once-in-a-lifetime pandemic. We have faced situations where the U.S. has wanted itself to close the border. We would convince them that it was not in their national interest to do so, so that the flow of goods could go through, so that the city of Detroit could actually have a healthcare system. So there's ways of negotiating. We've always been able to negotiate with the U.S. government. It's no different under this government. We will have to engage. And there are some things that we won't be able to speak publicly because of our relationship with the U.S., but it's in the national interest of both of our countries to have a safe, secure border. We have a job to do within our country, and the U.S. has a job to do in their country, and their challenges and problems shouldn't be our problems. Our problems and challenges shouldn't be theirs.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Anyone from the, yes, go ahead. Name and outlet.
Yeah. Hi, Ministers. My name is Surya from Vine Media. So my first question to Minister Artinani is, so CTV News has reported that, and even Indian media has reported that Arjdeep Singh Dalla, who is wanted by India, has been arrested in October in Britain. So, and CTV News has confirmed this, so that the arrest is made by Alton Police. So, any information you have about this?
Well, what I can say to you is that the way that law enforcement works in this country is that they make independent determinations about whom to arrest, and then it goes to the Crown Attorney's Office about the next steps on the prosecution. So the fact that law enforcement is doing its work is a good thing, but in terms of sort of updates on the next steps, that would be a question that's best put to the law enforcement officials themselves. It wouldn't be appropriate for the Attorney General of Canada and the Minister of Justice to weigh in on the steps that involve an ongoing criminal matter.
And one question to Minister Miller. So, you know, there's a lot of protests happening here and there, but do you think like all these protesters who are not like citizen or even probably just temporary residents, so do you think any action will be taken against them who are doing protests, and which is they also like obstructing the day-to-day routine to people?
I mean, if people break the law, they'll be arrested. If they're protesting legally, then that's their right in Canada. And it doesn't necessarily depend on whether they have permanent residency or citizenship or are international students. But if they break the law, they'll be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And again, there are many ways to do lawful protests. This is a country that prides itself on freedom of expression, as you know. So it's important for the democratic process. If I don't agree with them, I'll tell them I don't agree with them. And vocally, if it's views that I'm totally against. But again, to break those protests when they're being done legally wouldn't be right in a country like ours.
Can I just add to that point, because I just think it's really important for Y Media viewers and any viewers of the various outlets here to just underscore that in a democracy like Canada, politicians don't direct law enforcement, we don't direct Crown prosecutors, we don't direct judges. Those are all independent entities. That's a good thing in a democracy. So these decisions that are being taken by locally by the Peel Regional Police under the direction of Chief Nishan Durayappa. That is important, and that is the way it should be, because that is how we safeguard people's protections. We set the laws, but other people implement those laws, and how they do so is kept divorced from political interference, and that's really important as a safeguard in our country.
This is Hamreen Kaur from Punjab TV. My first question would be to Minister Miller. Minister Miller, through your ministry, we came to know the 2025 immigration level plans. But I would like to draw your attention to the temporary residents who came to Canada in 2018 and 19 when it was a pandemic era. While having a transparent conversation with them, we came to know that they are the ones who completed all the process that an immigrant has to go through. They completed their studies, they paid taxes, they got a work permit, and they are the ones who worked relentlessly day in and day out and they were also titled as pandemic heroes. My one simple question to you is that what does the government plan to think about them? Do you plan to provide any sort of hope to them that in future they might be eligible for a permanent residency, because they are the ones who are there in the pool? The immigration consultants are charging them tremendous amount of money, giving them false hopes that maybe in your future you'll be eligible and you'll be there in the queue for the permanent residency. I would like to ask you that what do you plan to say about those residents who are there here in Canada?
Look, if they have the points, they can become permanent residents, but they need that. The work permits that were extended were always temporary in nature, and temporary has to mean
It's fine.
They were extended throughout. Put it back over there. People would stay and would not have to face spreading of COVID or transporter movements, and to help. But again, regardless of whether there's a pandemic or not, the argument would have to be that they would have qualified anyway had there not been a pandemic. And in some cases that's a no, in some cases that's a yes. There's no blanket process for fully making someone a permanent resident based on having worked during the pandemic. That's just reality. But again, one of my efforts in the latest plan is to make sure that we are drawing domestically from Canada as opposed to going abroad and pulling people in, because we have a pool of talented people here in Canada that can help and can become permanent residents and contribute to making the labour force younger. Thank you.
Yeah, my next question would be to Minister Vinani. Minister, talking about GTA, we have seen record-breaking crimes happening. Brampton and Mississauga being at the top of the list. When we talk to the victims, we come to know that it's the issue of repetitive offenders which is happening. My question to you would be, why is the government not taking any action on the weak bail reforms? I mean, why is there not a direct action on that? Because we recently came to know that the provincial government is calling upon the Liberal government to take any action on that. So why is there not any clear stand on this issue? Because we see the repetitive offenders giving rise to everyday crimes that's happening in the GTA.
Okay, so thank you for the question. So I'd highlight a couple of things. So first of all, we've heard a lot about one particular crime in the 905, and that is automobile theft. And I hope you're aware that the statistics actually are showing a downward decline. So the Insurance Bureau of Canada put out statistics that show that there have been 19% less claims for automobile theft in the first 6 months of 2024 as compared to the first 6 months of 2023. That is as a result of changes that I put forward in the House of Commons that deal with the penalties for things like violent carjackings and things like automobile theft involving organized crime. We increased those penalties from 10 to 14 years. We also invested in border security, things such as the number of officers and people that are policing our ports from which the cars were exiting this country, and also things like scanners in this very neighborhood where we can scan railcar facilities to detect if a car is actually in one of those cargo containers destined for the Port of Montreal. That's a good step in the right direction. With respect to bail, we've also similarly heard clamoring for people to have more stringent bail rules. We heard this at the time of my predecessor, David Lametti. We put together a bail reform package, which we passed on an expedited basis in Parliament, and that bail reform package took place and came into full effect on January 1st of this year. What that bail package did is ensure that serious violent repeat offenders, it is much more difficult for them to be given bail, people that would steal a car using violence, using weapons, etc. The issues that people are facing right now is that they're not seeing changes on the ground. And I understand their frustrations. My constituents have expressed frustrations. My colleagues' constituents have expressed frustrations. What's really important for your viewers to understand is that I can change the criminal code multiple times at this level in Ottawa. What needs to happen on the ground is complementary changes about how we administer the system on the ground. What do I mean by that? I mean in terms of police officers, Crown attorneys, justices of the peace that are applying the law, and the detention centers that hold people. All four of those entities are not in my jurisdiction. They are in the jurisdiction of the City of Brampton or the City of Mississauga or the provincial jurisdiction. So when Chief Nish says he needs 300 more officers, I agree with him. He needs 300 more officers. That's not my decision. That's Patrick Brown's and de facto Premier Ford's. When I hear from Crown attorneys, and I hope you've read articles from Donna Kelway, she's the head of the Ontario Crown Attorneys Association, she says, my people are overworked and we don't have enough. I need more Crown attorneys. That is a spending decision of Doug Downey, the Provincial Attorney General, under the supervision of Premier Ford. When we have justices of the peace, they're meant to apply the law. It's not rocket science. I'll simplify it very easily for everyone in the room. If somebody, a John Doe, is out there and we think that they've committed a crime, we basically ask three questions. Are they going to leave the jurisdiction? Are they a flight risk? Are they going to reoffend? And lastly, would releasing John Doe bring confidence or undermine confidence in the administration of justice? That is a simple legal test. Right now it's being applied by people in Ontario who don't require any form of legal training or education prior to getting appointed. I raise that because it's not the same way in the rest of the country. In Nova Scotia, bail determinations are made only by a JP who had legal training before getting appointed. It'd be a great question to ask Premier Ford or Doug Downey, why don't they apply the same stringent requirements for JPs that you have in Nova Scotia? And the last piece is that I read jurisprudence. I'm the Minister of Justice. I'm supposed to read cases. The cases that have been put in front of me have shown that in some instances, JPs and provincial court judges don't want to release somebody, but then they look at, in this area, Maplehurst, in my city of Toronto, they look at the Toronto South Detention Centre and they say there are 3 people to a bunk and those conditions are deplorable. Deplorable of the nature of countries that maybe you and I hail from. I'm a South Asian Canadian just like you are. And they analogize the conditions we have here to far off lands that we left from. And they say, I can't in good conscience send somebody to that kind of facility. The conditions of those facilities, whether we have enough facilities, again, is something in the lane of jurisdiction of the province. These are important questions that need to be put to the province, including whether things such as when you get a situation of a John Doe who is potentially up for bail, there's supposed to be an argument about it. The Crown is supposed to say, no, don't give him bail. And then the defense lawyer says, no, do give him bail. Sometimes that never happens. Bail is given on consent. We've asked the province for the statistics of how many of those repeat offenders actually were given bail on consent. And the answer is that there's been no answer. I'm still waiting for an answer from Graham McGregor, Michael Kersner, and Doug Downey on that very point. Those would be great questions to put to them directly. Am I absolving myself of responsibility? Absolutely not. Am I willing to look at targeted changes to the criminal code? Absolutely. But again, I could change that code 3 more times in the next 3 months. Unless we see changes on the ground by the province, we will not have the safety that you want in this part of the 905, that I want in Toronto, and that all Canadians want in their areas. So these are important questions to be asking.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think Mr. Ranier has to run really quick, so if you have a question or feedback, just finish this one.
Hi, I'm Niharika from Voice of Toronto channel. I just want to ask one question. Like, in recent times, there has been a huge rejection in the work permit for business people and investors in the economy. Like, what actions the government is taking to safeguard these kind of investors who's ready to create a job creation in a market? And how is the government supporting them or safeguarding them?
It's a broad question. We'd have to probably spend a little longer on it. But the investor class of visas, for example, is a program that's largely canceled, except for the startup visa. I've had a lot of challenges with it in terms of its integrity. It's not that we don't want to attract capital and foreign direct investment to Canada. We have some record levels of foreign direct investment into Canada in the past years, so it's very important. We just feel that if the integrity of the system is to be upheld, visas that are accorded for people that pay for it are not ideal, and we have examples in the past of where that hasn't worked. So that is one area where we've sort of excluded any sort of future changes other than reforming the startup visa process. That is only one aspect of the answer. We're facing record levels of temporary foreign workers. We talked about international students. That, together with some of the humanitarian commitments and people that are here temporarily, also people here under our international agreements that provide for the free mobility of labor, comprise about 7% of the population, a little less than 7%. It's a record high, so we have to bring that down. We're in a different position, Canada and other countries. We have a large domestic pool of labor that we can pull from, including willing and able people that are here seeking asylum. So reorienting and rearranging and changing behaviors in the way we have gone after a little more affordable labor and changing habits within the economy is important. It creates turbulence, but it isn't something that should indicate for our economy that we are chasing away people and investment. It's quite the contrary. In fact, the numbers prove differently. Mm-hmm. We just want to make sure that there's an immigration system that supports it and doesn't push behavior towards chasing after what I've said in a lot of interviews is chasing after short-term gain for a lot of long-term pain, making sure we have a system that's manageable and that we can all be proud of. And that's sort of the spirit behind the levels that I announced 3 weeks ago. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you.
That concludes our Q&A portion. I just want to give the last chance to our MPs locally if you want to say anything or have any last words.
Sure. Let me, Sat Sri Akal, Namaste, Adab. Thank you to everyone for being here today. I want to thank Ruby and, of course, my good friend, Mark Miller, the Minister of Immigration, as well as Arif Irani, who had to leave. for these really important discussions. I think all of us here locally in Brampton hear about the issues that you've raised, whether it is immigration, whether it is on public safety, whether it is on the situation that's happening on the ground as we speak. And I think it's really important that you hear directly from the ministers responsible, because I can assure you our incredible team in the region of Peel works really closely with these amazing ministers to make sure our community understands that the feedback that we hear goes directly to the work that's been happening on the ground. And I just want to say thank you to our media partners for always taking that back to our community members to be able to have this wholesome discussion. So thank you ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਟਾਈਮ ਕੱਢ ਕੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨਾਲ ਇੱਥੇ ਪਹੁੰਚੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਹੋ ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਆਪਣੇ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਮਾਰਕ ਮਿਲਰ ਅਤੇ ਅਰੀਫ ਰਾਣੀ ਮੇਰੇ ਕਾਲੀਗ ਸਾਨੀਆ ਸਿੱਧੂ ਰੂਬੀ ਸਹੋਤਾ ਇਕਵਿੰਦਰ ਗਹੀਰ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੂੰਗੀ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਟਾਈਮ ਕੱਢ ਕੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਇਹ ਡਿਸਕਸ਼ਨ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈਗਾ I said all good things.
We are also very grateful that your government has done a lot, but I don't know how successful you have been in telling actually the public that you guys have done a great job.
That's why
That's your job.
But I want to give a minute to.
But
Yes.
the thing is that it is going to be our job if you people,
Yes.
I keep on sending you
100%.
emails for interviews, you guys
Yeah.
don't come. You
We'll,
just simply don't
we'll come more,
We'll
you're
come more
right.
after.
I'm going to give a minute to Sonia and Ikvinder as well because, they haven't said anything, so.
So first of all, thank you very much, all the media, to be here, and then very good questions. And thank you, Minister Miller, and Minister Virani was here just a minute before, but the question being answered. But this Liberal PL team is committed to work hard and advocate for you. And we all know that what's happening in our areas. There's issue being discussed today, but any feedback you are giving to us, we will advocate for you. And we all know one message this PL team want to give. Please let's bring peace and harmony in our country, and especially in Brampton and Mississauga in PL. And this is the media's I think role is a big role as well. And let's work together. We are all one united Canadians, and no matter where we came from, who we are, we're all united Canadians.
Ikvinder.
Let's work together.
Great. So I wanted to echo the comments from my colleagues. I'm very thankful to the ministers, Virani and Miller, for coming and listening to our concerns today. I want to say to everyone that's listening that we do hear your feedback. We take that feedback back to Ottawa, and we are your voice in Ottawa as well. And the ministers are here as witness to that because they wanted to hear directly from you guys as to the concerns relating to law enforcement, the law, and to immigration as well. So thank you for sharing your concerns, and we look forward to more great work. Thank you.
And I'll wrap it up since you're in my riding of Brampton North. I especially want to thank Minister Miller, who's taken a lot of time out of his day. He did an early morning visit of our asylum shelter that is now open, and they have, it's a part of it is still under construction, a part of it is open, so it's not at full capacity, but it will serve 680 asylum seekers. So now that burden that was on local shelters is no longer going to be on local shelters. I think it would be good to also put out there that shelters in the Peel region do have space. They are welcoming people. So if you do see people in the community that are in need, please reach out to the service lines. It's really, really important as the cold season is coming before us. That's definitely an issue we're all concerned with. The other issue that we hear raised all of the time is the issue on bail, and I do feel that to some degree, when it came to international students, the amount of private colleges that were opening up on Ontario, the system worked until the Ford government got there and gave many licenses to private institutions, and they made a lot of money off of it, those schools. And they are avoiding any responsibility on that issue and not coming forward and speaking at all, nor is anybody holding them accountable to what has happened. So we had to take measures, Minister Miller had to take extraordinary measures that have never been done as long as we've had international students in this country, which is capping it from a federal level and not allowing the provinces to decide what kind of workers they need, what kind of students they need, and in what areas they should study. Similarly to that, we have a situation with bail where provincial courts and provincial judges are deciding on these bail hearings and matters. And there's been a lot of deflection. I think we heard from Minister Virani that he is willing to make adjustments where needed, targeted, but this is still a country where you are innocent until proven guilty. And so there is no way that we could convict before a trial is done. But what we are seeing, that judges have the levers and they have the capacity to be able to deny bail if they feel the person will be a threat to society, if they feel this would not be, if they feel that's the case and the person is a repeat offender, they can deny. Nothing is tying their hands from denying bail. Why are they not denying bail? That is a question that's really important and needs to be posed and put forward. So all levels can work together to make sure that our system works. There are atrocious numbers as to the amount of cases that are not even getting to trial. So we have a whole bunch of great laws out there, but those laws aren't even being applied because if you're not going to trial, what good are any of those charges? They're all getting dropped at the end of the day, right? So we've got to make sure the judicial system at the provincial level is working, which applies criminal laws. We can create all the criminal laws we want, but if people are not being tried, what good are any of those criminal laws? So those are questions I think that need to be addressed. And so I thought those are two areas I should mention. And of course, me and my colleagues, the Prime Minister has made many statements as to the unrest that has been happening in our society. And we just want to continue to ask people to avoid disinformation and misinformation that is spreading online and that is inciting hatred against communities. That is not Canadian, that is not who we are, and we should stand united just like we always have for years and years in this country. We can't let them get the better of us. We are one community. Hindus, Sikhs, Muslims, Christians, Jews, everyone in this country is welcome, and we all work together, we all live together, and something we read on social media should not change how we feel about each other. So thank you, Minister Miller, for being here. Really appreciate all your efforts, and of course, Minister Virani, who had to go. Thank you. Thank you to the media.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
रूबी थैंक यू वेरी मच फॉर टॉकिंग विद अस अच्छा ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸੋ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਇਵੈਂਟ ਕਰਵਾਇਆ ਇਸ ਦਾ ਬੇਸਿਕ ਮਕਸਦ ਕੀ ਸੀ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਅੱਜ ਦੋ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਟ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰਸ ਇੱਥੇ ਆਏ ਸਨ ਇੱਕ ਤੇ ਆਰਿਫ ਵਿਰਾਨੀ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਆਏ ਸਨ ਇੱਕ ਮਾਰਕ ਮਿਲਰ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਆਏ ਸਨ ਇੱਕ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਅਟਾਰਨੀ ਜਨਰਲ ਨੇ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਇਮੀਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਨੇ ਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਮੁੱਦਾ ਸੀ ਉਹ ਕੀ ਸੀ ਕੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਸੇਜ ਭੇਜਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਸੋ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਇਸ ਇਵੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਥਰੂ
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਫਰਸਟ ਆਫ ਆਲ ministers they had ਕਾਫੀ busy schedule ਸੀਗੇ ਉਸ ਏਰੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੀਲ ਰੀਜਨ ਚ ਆਏ ਹੋਏ ਸੀਗੇ so they did some things in Mississauga they did some things in Brampton ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ immigration minister ਨੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੁਝ $10 million ਇਨਵੈਸਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀ asylum claimants ਦਾ ਜੋ issues shelters ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀਗਾ ਪਿਛਲੇ summer ਤੋਂ we made this announcements last year we gave the money over to the region of Peel Patrick Brown was at the announcement as well ਉਦੋਂ ਉਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਸੀ ਵੀ ਕੁਝ ਮਹੀਨੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਸ਼ੈਲਟਰ ਅਪ ਐਂਡ ਰਨਿੰਗ ਕਰਾ ਲੈਣਗੇ ਪਰ I think ਕੁਝ ਲੀਸ ਦੇ issues and disputes ਹੋ ਗਏ ਸੀਗੇ so now the shelter has been running for about a month now ਅਸੀਂ ਉਸ ਸ਼ੈਲਟਰ ਨੂੰ ਵਿਜ਼ਿਟ ਕਰਕੇ ਆਏ it's close to the airport ਕੁਝ 860 people capacity 680 people ਦੀ capacity ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਉਸ ਸ਼ੈਲਟਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਕਾਫੀ ਹੱਦ ਤੱਕ ਜੋ ਪੀਲ ਰੀਜਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਅਸਾਈਲਮ ਸੀਕਰਸ ਨੂੰ ਸ਼ੈਲਟਰ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਇਟਸ ਅ ਟ੍ਰਾਂਜੀਸ਼ਨਲ ਹਾਊਸਿੰਗ ਰੀਲੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਇੱਕ 10 ਦਿਨ ਦਾ ਪਲਾਨ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਜੌਬਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਨੈਕਟ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ once the person gets working then they're able to move out of the shelter they're able to connect them with housing and also ਉਹ ਇੱਕ ਪਲਾਨ ਬਣਾ ਕੇ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਵੀ ਕਿਸ ਏਰੀਆ ਆਫ ਦ ਕੰਟਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਜਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਹੋ and cost analysis ਦੇ basis ਤੇ jobs ਦੇ basis ਤੇ so it's a really good structure ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਉੱਥੇ ਇੱਕ wrap around support service ਮਿਲਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ and ਜੋ I think ਆਮ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਜੋ Canadians ਇੱਕ well functioning system ਦੀ ਮੰਗ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਵੀ ਜਦੋਂ ਲੋਕ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਉਹ proper ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਤੇ ਪਹੁੰਚਣ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ job ਮਿਲ ਸਕਦੀ ਹੈ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ housing ਮਿਲ ਸਕਦੀ ਹੈ so that's something that shelter does ਉਹ ਪੂਰੀ ਇੱਕ complete 100% federal investment ਹੈਗੀ ਆ despite social services ਕੁਛ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਉਹ obviously province and municipalities ਤੋਂ ਵੀ provide ਕੀਤੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਆ ਪਰ ਜੋ shelter ਬਣਾਇਆ ਗਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ ਜੋ ਉਸ ਦਾ ਖਰਚਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ ਉਹ federal government ਨੇ ਪੂਰਾ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਮਿਲਰ ਕੁਛ ਸਟੇਕ ਹੋਲਡਰਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਇੱਥੇ ਮਿਲੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਮਤਲਬ ਮੇਰੇ ਲੋਕਲ ਜੋ ਇਸ਼ੂਜ਼ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਕੁਛ whether they are about students, international students, ਜਾਂ processing of visa applications, religious workers, the applications ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਕੁਛ ਜੋ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਨਵਰਸੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੋਈ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਫੀਡਬੈਕ ਲਈ ਗਈ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਐਂਡ ਦੈਟਸ ਵੈਰੀ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਉਹ ਮੇਰੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਤੱਕ ਇਸ਼ੂਜ਼ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਉਂਦੇ ਆ ਐਂਡ ਵੀ ਆਈ ਐਜ਼ ਅ ਰਿਪਰੈਜ਼ੈਂਟੇਟਿਵ ਆਲਵੇਜ਼ ਬ੍ਰਿੰਗ ਦੋਜ਼ ਇਸ਼ੂਜ਼ ਪਰ ਕਦੇ ਕਦੇ ਉਹ ਫੇਸ ਟੂ ਫੇਸ ਟਾਈਮ ਵੀ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਡਾਇਰੈਕਟਲੀ ਆਪਦੇ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਟ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਸੋ ਵੀ ਲਾਈਕ ਇਟ ਜਦੋਂ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰਸ ਆਪਣੀ ਰਾਈਟਿੰਗਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਅਤੇ ਡਾਇਰੈਕਟਲੀ ਸਟੇਕ ਹੋਲਡਰਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਮਿਲ ਸਕਦੇ ਆ ਸੋ ਦੈਟ ਵਾਜ਼ ਵਨ ਪਾਰਟ ਆਫ ਇਟ ਐਂਡ ਦੈਨ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਵਰਾਨੀ has already done that previously in this area with some stakeholders but ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ I think this is a good opportunity to come in front of the media ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਬਹੁਤ questions rise ਹੋ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ ਜੋ ਟੋਰਾਂਟੋ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੁਛ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਮਸ ਹੋਈਆਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਜੋ ਇੱਥੇ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ whether it's crimes arising out of protests and unrest between communities ਜਾਂ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ auto theft ਨੂੰ address ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈਗਾ and ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਹੋਰ issues ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ I thought it was important ਵੀ media ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਤੇ ਇਕੱਠੇ ਕਰਕੇ ਕੁਛ ਉਸ ਸਵਾਲਾਂ ਦੇ ਜਵਾਬ ਦੇ ਸਕਣ and ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਹੀ immigration is also a very hot issue in our community. ਦੋਨੇ ਹੀ issues ਬਹੁਤ important ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ Canadians ਲਈ and especially ਮੇਰੇ Brampton ਦੇ residents ਲਈ justice and immigration. And I think ਜਿਹੜੀ ਅਗਲੀ election ਵੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਇਹਨਾਂ issues ਤੇ ਸਾਡਾ ਪੂਰਾ focus ਹੈਗਾ ਆ government ਦਾ ਧਿਆਨ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ ਇਹ issues ਉੱਠਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ and I want Canadians to understand ਵੀ ਇਹ issues ਸਿਰਫ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਹੀਂ ਉੱਠ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਸਾਰੀ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇਹ issues arise ਹੋ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਜੋ auto theft ਦਾ issue ਆ it's not just a Canadian issue ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਪਦੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਵੀ friend or relative ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰੋ it's a huge issue there too guns are coming across the border from the US I know a lot of times people will say why don't we have penalties like the US ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਹੁਤ high level of crime ਹੈਗਾ ਆ so we should look at the world in perspective and ਕਈ ਵਾਰ ਆਪਾਂ ਸਿਰਫ ਸੋਚਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਵੀ ਜੋ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਸਿਰਫ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਬਰੈਂਪਟਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਆ ਜਾਂ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਆ that is not the case ਪਰ ਉਹਦਾ ਸੋਲੂਸ਼ਨ ਕੀ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ ਉਹ ਸਾਡੀ ਰਿਸਪੌਂਸਿਬਿਲਿਟੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਵੀ ਜੇ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਉੱਠ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਭਾਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਸਾਰੀ ਦੁਨੀਆ 'ਤੇ ਉੱਠ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਨੇ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਟੈਕਲ ਕਰਨਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਰਾਈਟ that is our responsibility and I feel we are trying to tackle those issues. Inflation da bahut vada issue hega. Our country is now doing much better in that area of inflation. Apni interest rates भी comparable to the US jaldi ਇੱਥੇ ਡਿੱਗ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਨੇ which is I think going to give people that relief ਜੋ ਉਹ ਮੰਗ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਕੁਛ ਟਾਈਮ ਤੋਂ inflation we are now under 2% ਆਪਣਾ target ਸੀਗਾ so government policies ਦਾ ਕਿਤੇ ਨਾ ਕਿਤੇ monetary policies ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ positive effect ਪੈ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਜੋ pandemic ਆਇਆ ਸੀ ਉਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ negative effect ਤਾਂ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਪਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ but we want to get back into a good position so that our economy can start booming again international students ਦਾ ਜਾਂ migration ਦਾ ਵੀ issue ਹੈਗਾ ਹੁਣ south of the border ਜੋ election ਹੋਈ ਆ ਉਸ ਤੇ relation ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਵੀ borders ਤੇ ਕੀ situation arise ਹੋਗੀ we saw that in the last Trump presidency as well we're getting prepared for that ਇਸ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਉਸ 'ਤੇ ਆਲਰੇਡੀ ਕਲਮ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈਗਾ that's why we signed stricter third safe country agreement ਜੋ third safe country agreement ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਆਪਣੀ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਵੀ ਸੀਗੀ ਪਰ ਉਹ ਸਿਰਫ ਲੀਗਲ ਪੋਰਟਸ 'ਤੇ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਲੀਗਲ ਐਂਟਰੀ ਪੁਆਇੰਟਸ ਨੇ ਉੱਥੇ ਅਪਲਾਈ ਕੀਤੀ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਸੀ ਸੋ ਜੋ ਆਪਾਂ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ ਰੌਕਸਮ ਰੋਡ ਦੇ ਥਰੂ ਕਿਬੈਕ ਐਂਟਰੈਂਸ ਦੇ ਥਰੂ ਲੋਕ ਇੱਕ irregular entry ਦੇ ਥਰੂ ਵੜ ਰਹੇ ਸੀਗੇ and the agreement didn't apply to that now I want to warn all your viewers ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ now it applies to the whole border ਭਾਵੇਂ ਉਹ irregular point ਹੈਗਾ ਜਾਂ regular point ਹੈਗਾ if you are found to have crossed the border from the US and there's no other way to cross right Canada ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਆਏ ਹੈਗੇ ਹੋ then that has to be from the US border otherwise ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ land airport ਤੇ land ਹੋਏ ਹੈਗੇ ਹੋ right so if you are coming from the US then you have to stay in the US if you are in Canada you have to stay and make your asylum claim in Canada ਤੁਸੀਂ Canada ਤੋਂ US ਨਹੀਂ asylum claim ਕਰਨ ਜਾ ਸਕਦੇ and US ਤੋਂ Canada ਨਹੀਂ asylum claim ਤੁਹਾਡੀ asylum ਨਹੀਂ ਮੰਨੀ ਜਾਊਗੀ you have to stay in your first country of landing and ਉੱਥੇ ਹੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ asylum ਦੀ hearing ਮੰਗ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਹੋ yes, you will get due process. This country is still about giving people a fair opportunity. But je oh opportunity tusi already use kar chukke hegi ho, exhausted hegi hai, and tusi out of status hegi ho, then you've heard from Minister Miller that they have been looking at expediting processes so that jo removals hegi oh ho sakdiyan ne. I think it is in people's best interest be ਉਹ voluntary departure ਕਰਨ ਜੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਟੇਟਸ ਐਕਚੁਅਲੀ ਖਤਮ ਹੋਣ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਹੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਫਿਰ ਫਿਊਚਰ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਇੱਕ ਪੋਸਿਬਿਲਿਟੀ ਰਹਿ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਅਦਰਵਾਈਜ਼ ਦੇ ਆਰ ਰੀਲੀ ਸ਼ਟਿੰਗ ਦ ਡੋਰ ਟੂ ਐਨੀ ਫਿਊਚਰ ਓਪਰਚੁਨਿਟੀਜ਼ ਐਂਡ ਆਈ ਥਿੰਕ ਦੈਟਸ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਫॉर ਇੰਟਰਨੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਸਟੂਡੈਂਟਸ ਟੂ ਹੀਅਰ ਐਜ਼ ਵੈਲ
ਅੱਛਾ ਰੂਬੀ ਇੱਕ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇੱਥੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੇਖ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ ਸਾਡੇ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜਾ GTA ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇਹ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੰਡੀਅਨ ਪਾਕਿਸਤਾਨੀ ਤੇ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਹੈ ਸਨ ਹੁਣ ਕੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅਰਬਸ ਵੀ ਆ ਗਏ ਨੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੇ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਗਾਜ਼ਾ ਦੀ ਵਾਰ ਦੀ ਵਜ੍ਹਾ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਸਟ ਹੋ ਰਹੇ ਨੰਬਰ 1 ਉਸ ਦੀ ਵਜ੍ਹਾ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਔਰ ਫਿਰ ਇਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੁਣ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਅਰਸ਼ ਡੱਲਾ ਨੂੰ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਫੜਿਆ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ ਖਾਲਿਸਤਾਨ ਦਾ ਵੀ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਬਹੁਤ ਭੜਕ ਗਿਆ ਹੈ ਇੰਡੀਆ ਔਰ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੀ ਕੌਨਸਟੈਂਟਲੀ ਉਸ ਉੱਤੇ ਲੜਾਈ ਲੱਗੀ ਰਹਿੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੀ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਹੋ ਕਿ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਲੋਕ ਜਿਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਪ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਬੈਠਦੇ ਹੋ ਅਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੋ ਇਸ਼ੂਜ਼ ਉੱਤੇ ਗਾਜ਼ਾ ਉੱਤੇ ਔਰ ਖਾਲਿਸਤਾਨ ਉੱਤੇ ਕੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਡਿਸਕਸ਼ਨ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਵਾਟ ਇਜ਼ ਦਾ ਵੇ ਫਾਰਵਰਡ
I think the two issues are very different, but kuch similarities vi hagiyan if you think that be diaspora communities de vich issues utre hagiyan but they're all human beings at the end of the day pame oho recently kise hor country to aaye hagiyan ja kei generations pehla aaye hagiyan Canada is full of immigrants so to say ਜਦੋਂ Irish settlers ਆਏ ਨੇ ਹੋਰ ਵੀ settlers ਆਏ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵੀ ਕੁਝ issues ਹੁੰਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇੱਥੇ raise ਕੀਤੇ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ so we do have the right to legal protest in this country but I think ਕਿਤੇ ਨਾ ਕਿਤੇ ਹਰ ਇੱਕ ਆਰਗੇਨਾਈਜੇਸ਼ਨ ਨੂੰ ਦੇਖਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਵੀ ਕਿ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਸਟ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕਿਸੇ ਹੋਰ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਸੇ ਹੋਰ ਦੇ ਰਾਈਟਸ ਨੂੰ ਇਨਫਰਿੰਜ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ ਯੂ ਹੈਵ ਟੂ ਮੇਕ ਸ਼ੋਰ ਯੂ ਆਰ ਨਾਟ ਉਹ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਲੀਗਲ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਸਟ ਇਲੀਗਲ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਸਟ ਨਹੀਂ ਬਣ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਬਿਕਾਜ਼ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵਾਇਲੈਂਸ ਯੂਜ਼ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਹੋ ਜਾਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇੰਟੀਮੀਡੇਟ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਹੋ ਕਿਸੇ ਹੋਰ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਨੂੰ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਇਸ ਸਾਰੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਟੈਸਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੁਛ ਨਾ ਕੁਛ ਦੇਖਣ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਐਂਡ ਮੇਅਰ ਪੈਟਰਿਕ ਬਰਾਊਨ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਅੱਜ ਪਤਾ ਨਹੀਂ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਐਨੀਵੇਜ਼ ਕਾਉਂਸਲ ਦੇ which ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ bylaw pass ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ which I commend them on. We are also looking at similar legislation, bubble legislation, so that schools and places of worship, ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ abortion clinics and hospitals protected ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਵੀ ਇਹ areas ਵੀ protected ਹੋਣ so that ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇੱਕ emotional ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਲਈ ਉਹਦੇ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਜਦੋਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ protest ਕਰੋਗੇ and this happened in the Gaza-Israel protests as well, then you're not making the other community feel unwelcome in Canada, right? Tusi abdi gal ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਹੱਕ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ because I do really feel sympathetic and we are advocating to the Prime Minister about the issue of people in Gaza, in the West Bank, the acknowledgement of a two-state solution. ਉਹਦੇ ਤੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਹੋ ਰਹੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਜੋਲੀ ਨੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਮੀਟਿੰਗਸ ਅਬਰੋਡ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਮਿਡਲ ਈਸਟਰਨ ਕੰਟਰੀਜ਼ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਯੂਰਪੀਅਨ ਕੰਟਰੀਜ਼ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੋ ਦੈਟ ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਨੈਗੋਸ਼ੀਏਟਡ ਸੋਲੂਸ਼ਨ ਲੱਭ ਸਕੀਏ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਸੋ ਦੈਟ ਇਹ ਵਾਇਲੈਂਸ ਐਂਡ ਹੋ ਸਕੇ ਐਂਡ ਕੁਛ ਸਟੈਬਿਲਿਟੀ ਮਿਲ ਸਕੇ ਉਸ ਰੀਜਨ ਨੂੰ ਐਂਡ ਲੌਂਗ ਲਾਸਟਿੰਗ ਪੀਸ ਮਿਲ ਸਕੇ When it comes to the issue that we're seeing here with pro-India or pro-Modi protests and Khalistani protests, the RCMP has addressed that issue and the RCMP has made it very clear that there are foreign elements जो tactics use ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਇੱਥੇ unrest ਆਪਣੀ community ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਲਈ and we will not stand for that and Peel Regional Police ਨਾਲ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਇਸ ਚੀਜ਼ 'ਤੇ meeting ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ that foreign interference they recognize as well and they're working very very closely. I think ਕੋਈ ਵੀ police agency ਜੋ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਜਿੰਨੀ closely Peel Regional Police and RCMP ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ probably because of the issues that are arising ਉਹ ਬਹੁਤ closely ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ and ਉਹ ਅੰਡਰਸਟੈਂਡ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਕਈ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਉਹ ਪਬਲਿਕਲੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਹਿ ਸਕਦੇ ਪਰ RCMP ਨੇ ਕਈ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਪਬਲਿਕਲੀ ਆਲਰੇਡੀ ਡਿਸਕਲੋਜ਼ ਕੀਤੀਆਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਨੇ that this is a coordinated effort and ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸੋਸ਼ਲ ਮੀਡੀਆ 'ਤੇ ਵੀ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਦੇਖੋ most of the comments and most of the news on this issue ਜੋ issues Canada ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ, most of the news is coming from another country on those issues. So you can see ਵੀ ਉਹ narrative ਕਿੱਥੇ ਨੂੰ drive ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, and I'm just saying that ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ careful and aware ਹੋਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਵੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਬਟਨਸ ਕੌਣ ਪੁਸ਼ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਆ। ਜਦੋਂ ਵੀ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਭਾਵੇਂ ਇਸ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਤੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, ਭਾਵੇਂ whether it's about refugees or something, some other issue, ਜੇ ਕੋਈ ਓਵਰਲੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਵੋਕੇਟਿਵ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਚੀਜ਼ ਸੋਸ਼ਲ ਮੀਡੀਆ 'ਤੇ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, ਉਹ ਖਾਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੀ ਅਟੈਂਸ਼ਨ ਖਿੱਚਣ ਲਈ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ। ਇਟਸ ਵੈਰੀ ਐਗਜ਼ੈਜਰੇਟਿਡ, ਇਟਸ ਓਵਰ ਦਾ ਟੌਪ ਟੂ ਸੋ ਦੈਟ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਦੇ 'ਤੇ ਕਮੈਂਟ ਕਰੋ, ਲਾਈਕ ਕਰੋ। ਇਟਸ ਬਿਕਮ ਅ ਵਹੀਕਲ ਟੂ ਮੇਕ ਮਨੀ ਐਂਡ ਇਟਸ ਆਲਸੋ ਬਿਕਮ ਅ ਵਹੀਕਲ ਟੂ disrupt democracies. So I think we need to be very, very savvy and aware of these things. And ਜੋ ਹਾਦਸਾ ਹੁਣ ਮਿਸਟਰ ਮੱਲੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੈਲੇਡਨ ਏਰੀਆ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਇਆ ਹੈਗਾ, that's very concerning to me, because ਕਿਤੇ ਨਾ ਕਿਤੇ ਉਹ ਸੋਸ਼ਲ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਪੋਸਟ ਜੋ ਇਸ਼ੂਜ਼ ਹੋ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, you know, this is the biggest tragedy that's coming out of this, right? ਕਿਉਂਕਿ they are everyday people ਜੋ ਇਸ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ caught up ਹੋ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਨੇ, ਤੇ heated discussions ਹੋ ਰਹੀਆਂ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਨੇ, ਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਦੂਜੇ ਦੇ against turn ਹੋ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, and it's caused somebody to die and lose their life and a family to lose their father and husband.
Just like the Afzal family.
Just like the Afzal family, right? Hate, when you create hate in people's hearts and minds, and we are seeing that very similarly through disinformation, through Russia, when it comes to those issues as well, creating further Islamophobia. There is a lot of similarities along these issues. That's why I think kite na kite Minister Virani jo social media nu regulate karn di gal kar rahe hege a, it's not about freedom of speech. Freedom of speech ਤੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਹੀ ਰੈਕਗਨਾਈਜ਼ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈਗਾ, ਇੱਥੇ ਦੀ ਕਨਸਟੀਟਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਵੀ ਰੈਕਗਨਾਈਜ਼ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈ ਵੀ ਉਹਦੇ ਤੇ ਕੁਝ ਲਿਮਿਟਸ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, ਤੇ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਆਰਗੇਨਾਈਜੇਸ਼ਨ ਆ ਜਾਂ ਟੈਲੀਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਸ਼ੋਜ਼ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ, ਉਹ CRTC ਰੈਗੂਲੇਟ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ, ਅਤੇ ਕੰਪਲੀਟ ਫਰੀਡਮ ਆਫ ਸਪੀਚ ਨਹੀਂ ਦਿੰਦੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਵੀ ਜੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੋਈ ਚੀਜ਼ ਗਲਤ ਕਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਹੋ, ਯੂ ਨੋ ਫਾਲਸ knowingly ਤੁਸੀਂ ਫਾਲਸ ਇਨਫੋਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਹੋ, ਜਾਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਗਰੁੱਪ ਨੂੰ ਟਾਰਗੇਟ ਜਾਂ ਇਨਸਾਈਟ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਹੋ, there is a line, ਹੈ ਨਾ, ਜਿਹੜੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪਾਸ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ। ਪਰ ਸੋਸ਼ਲ ਮੀਡੀਆ 'ਤੇ ਕਿਤੇ ਨਾ ਕਿਤੇ ਉਹ ਲਾਈਨ ਹੈ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਗੀ, ਐਂਡ ਉਹ ਲਾਈਨ ਕ੍ਰੀਏਟ ਕਰਨੀ ਪਊਗੀ। ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਵੀ ਆਪਾਂ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀਗੀ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਸੋਰਸਿਸ ਲਈ, ਹੁਣ ਸੋਸ਼ਲ ਮੀਡੀਆ ਲਈ ਵੀ ਕ੍ਰੀਏਟ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ। The Conservatives are fighting against this. I think the Conservatives are wrong, and I think they need to take this very, very seriously. Foreign interference ਦਾ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਵੀ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ seriously ਲੈਣਾ ਪਊਗਾ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ if they want to show themselves to be, you know, worthy of being a leader in this country or to be in government, then you have to be realistic, है ना। तो exaggerated statements लेके लोगों ਨੂੰ ਭੜਕਾ ਕੇ ਕੋਈ ਨਾ ਕੋਈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ, you know, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਵੋਟਾਂ ਲੈਣੀਆਂ, it's not a responsible thing. Let's fix these problems. Let's come up with good solutions to these. And ਕਿਤੇ ਨਾ ਕਿਤੇ ਦਾ freedom of speech ਥੋੜੀ ਮੋਟੀ ਤਾਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੀ infringe ਕਰਨੀ ਪੈਣੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ
ਅੱਛਾ ਜੀ, ਬਿਲਕੁਲ। ਅੱਛਾ, ਹੁਣ ਟਰੰਪ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਆ ਗਏ ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ, ਮੈਂ ਸੁਣਿਆ ਕਿ ਪ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇੱਕ ਕਮੇਟੀ ਤੇ ਬਣਾਈ ਹੈ ਟੂ ਪ੍ਰੀਪੇਅਰ ਫॉर द ਸੈਕੰਡ ਟਰੰਪ ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਸੀ। ਲੇਕਿਨ ਉਹੀ ਅਗੇਨ ਮੇਰਾ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਿਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਪ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਮਿਲਦੇ ਹੋ ਤਾਂ ਪ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਦੇ ਲੈਵਲ 'ਤੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਕੀ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਬਈ ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਉਹ ਕਹਿ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ 10% ਬਲੈਂਕਟ ਮੈਂ ਟੈਰਿਫਸ ਲਗਾ ਦਿਆਂਗਾ। ਆਲਰੇਡੀ ਵੀ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੀ ਲੜਾਈ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਸੀ, ਜੋ ਪਹਿਲੀ ਫਰਸਟ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਸੀ ਸੀ ਉਸ 'ਤੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮਸ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੇ ਸਨ ਜੋ ਬਾਈਡਨ ਐਡਮਿਨਿਸਟ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੋਲਵ ਹੋ ਸਕੇ। ਹੁਣ ਅਗਰ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਆ ਜਾਣਗੀਆਂ, ਟਰੰਪ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਖੁਦ ਵੀ ਕੁਛ ਇਤਨਾ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਪ੍ਰਾਈਮ ਮਿਨਿਸਟਰ ਟਰੂਡੋ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨੂੰ ਇਤਨਾ ਪਸੰਦ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਦੇ, ਔਰ ਤਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਕੀ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਅਜੇ 1 ਸਾਲ ਹੈ ਵੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਕੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਬਲਮਸ ਆ ਸਕਦੀਆਂ ਜਨਵਰੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਉਹ ਆਪਣਾ ਓਥ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਨੇ ਐਸ ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਟ?
Yeah, so ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੈਬਨਿਟ ਕਮੇਟੀ ਦੀ ਫਾਰਮੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਸੁਣੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ, ਪਰ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਆਲਰੇਡੀ, ਯੂ ਨੋ, ਪਿਛਲੀ ਵਾਰ ਵੀ ਸਾਡੀ ਇਸ ਐਡਮਿਨਿਸਟ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਡੀ ਗਵਰਨਮੈਂਟ ਡੀਲ ਕਰ ਚੁੱਕੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ। ਵੀ ਰੀਨੇਗੋਸ਼ੀਏਟਡ NAFTA। ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜੀ NAFTA ਐਗਰੀਮੈਂਟ ਅਸੀਂ ਰੀਨੇਗੋਸ਼ੀਏਟ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀ, ਉਹ ਟਰੰਪ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀਗੀ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਅਪਰੂਵਲ ਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਸਾਈਨੇਜ ਹੀ ਹੋਈ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਉਸ ਐਗਰੀਮੈਂਟ 'ਤੇ। ਸੋ ਆਈ ਥਿੰਕ ਕਿਤੇ ਨਾ ਕਿਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਹੀ ਯਾਦ ਕਰਾ ਦੇਵਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ, ਬਾਕੀ ਵੀ ਯਾਦ ਕਰਾਉਣ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਹੀ ਅਗਰੀਮੈਂਟ, ਇੰਪਰੂਵਡ ਅਗਰੀਮੈਂਟ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਇਨਪੁਟ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਬਣਾਈ ਗਈ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ। ਸੋ ਜਿੰਨੇ ਸਿਆਣੇ ਹੋ ਉਦੋਂ ਸੀਗੇ, ਉਨੇ ਹੀ ਸਿਆਣੇ ਹੁਣ ਹੋਣਗੇ, ਰਾਈਟ? ਸੋ ਯੂ ਨੋ, ਦਿਸ ਇਜ਼ ਅ ਗੁੱਡ ਅਗਰੀਮੈਂਟ ਫॉर both countries. They accepted it was a good agreement at the time, and so I do think they'll recognize that. सिर्फ इस कैबिनेट कमेटी फॉर्मेशन ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੀ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਨਹੀਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋਈ ਕਈ ਮਹੀਨੇ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਇਲੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਵੀ ਆਲਰੇਡੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਕੰਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਮੈਂਬਰਸ ਆਫ ਪਾਰਲੀਮੈਂਟ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੇ ਕਾਂਗਰਸ ਪਰਸਨਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਰਿਲੇਸ਼ਨਸ਼ਿਪਸ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਸਾਡੀਆਂ ਐਸੋਸੀਏਸ਼ਨਸ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਬਾਰਡਰ ਸਟੇਟਸ ਹੈਗੇ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਟ੍ਰੇਡ ਐਂਡ ਮੈਨੂਫੈਕਚਰਿੰਗ ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਆ ਇੱਕ ਕਾਰ ਨੂੰ ਬਣਾਉਣ ਲਈ ਕਿੰਨੀ ਵਾਰ ਪਾਰਟਸ ਬੈਕ ਐਂਡ ਫੋਰਥ ਜਾਂਦੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਬਾਰਡਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਸੋ I think our relationship is a special relationship. We know that. ਜਿੰਨੀ trade ਕੈਨੇਡਾ ਤੇ US ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਦੋ ਮੁਲਕ ਹੋਰ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੇ ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੰਨੀ trade volume of trade and ਇੰਨੀ frequency ਦੇ ਨਾਲ trade ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ we also share the largest border right that any two countries share and so I think ਸਾਡੀ ਆਪਣੀ relationship ਥੋੜੀ different ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ we have been working with them the Prime Minister in conversations with him he is saying the American people have chosen their president. We have worked with him before. We are going to work with him. The American presidency, the American people are very important allies to us. And we're ready to work. Bameo border issues te hega, si cooperate karange. They're always going to find a cooperative partner. But we have to make sure that it's in the interest of both countries. Asi compromise vi nahi karange. Canada the position, right? Kiki they need Canada too. Yeah. We're so integrated right now. We have to remind them what is at stake. We have a lot of resources that they rely on. And we're very rich when it comes to resources. And I think they will see that.
Thank you very much. ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ comprehensive or ਬੜੀ detailed ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਰਾ interview ਦਿੱਤਾ. Please, you are most welcome to our studio anytime that you want to talk about, especially this shelter, this new shelter that has opened up. ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਇਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਕੋਈ ਨਈ ਚੀਜ਼ ਖੋਲਦੇ ਹੋ, ਕੁਝ start ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ, liberal government ਕੋਈ initiative ਲੈਤੀ ਹੈ, you are most welcome to come over to 770 and discuss all those things ताकि community ਨੂੰ ਉਸ ਦਾ ਪਤਾ ਚੱਲ सके. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
ये था हमारा आज का कम्युनिटी राउंड अप अब मुझे शाजिया मलिक को और कैमरे के पीछे यास्मिन जी को इजाज़त दीजिए वी विल कीप ब्रिंगिंग यू ऑल दोज लेटेस्ट स्टोरीज फ्रॉम द कम्युनिटी इवेंट्स और आप हमारे साथ जुड़े रहिए और हमको फीडबैक भी दीजिए बट बाय फॉर नाउ